Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dog Walk Trump. So today I want to talk about a really sad and tragic story of Otto Warmbier, an American student who was imprisoned in North Korea without any trial or due process, accused of stealing a propaganda poster from his hotel room. And just as he was about to leave the country at the airport, two North Korean guards detained him, sent him to prison where he was tortured, and about a year later, he was returned to his parents in a persistent vegetative state, which basically means he was brain dead. But first, let's take a look at this video where Trump talks about Otto Warmbier at the Hanoi summit in Vietnam.
You have a personal relationship, and I believe Vice President Pence does, with the family of Otto Warmbier. I'm wondering, you've talked about this week about Kim Jong Un being my friend. You called him on Twitter. You said you have a great relationship. Have you in Singapore or here confronted Kim Jong Un about Otto Warmbier's death?
I have.
Asked him to take responsibility.
Yeah.
What did he say to you, and why do you call him your friend?
I have, and I have talked about it, and I really don't think it was in his interest at all. I know the Warmbier family very well. I think they're an incredible family. What happened is horrible. I really believe something very bad happened to him, and I don't think that the top leadership knew about it. And when they had to send him home, by the way, I got the prisoners back, I got the hostages back, and Otto was one of the hostages, but Otto came back in shape that was not even to be talked about. I thought it was horrible. Now, the others came back extremely healthy, but Otto came back in a condition that was just terrible. And I did speak about it, and I don't believe that he would have allowed that to happen. It just wasn't to his advantage to allow that to happen. Those prisons are rough. They're rough places, and bad things happened. But I really don't believe that he was. I don't believe he knew about it.
Did he tell you that he did not? Did Kim Jong Un tell you?
He felt badly about it. I did speak to him. He felt very badly. He knew the case very well, but he knew it later. And, you know, you got a lot of people, a big country, a lot of people. And in those prisons and those camps, you have a lot of people. And some really bad things happened to Otto. Some really, really bad things.
Why are you willing to call him?
He tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
First of all, what? He tells me he didn't know about it and I will take him at his word? Trump takes the word of Kim Jong Un, the brutal North Korean dictator who executed his education minister for having a slouching posture at a meeting, who blew up one of his generals with an anti-aircraft cannon simply for sleeping during a speech. He takes Kim Jong Un's word after this notorious history of killing people for like no reason at all and this random brutality. This is ridiculous and is very consistent with how Trump takes the word of all of these brutal dictators on the world stage. He took the word of Vladimir Putin when he told Trump that he had nothing to do with any kind of interference in the 2016 presidential election, which is total BS. He took the word of the Saudi Arabian crown prince when he said he had nothing to do with the bonesaw dismemberment of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi, an American green card holder. Now, this is just simply outrageous that Trump takes the word of these dictators without any question. And in particular, with regard to Otto Warmbier, there was this very highly publicized international media event where the North Korean government paraded Otto Warmbier out to give this very heartbreaking confession under duress, where he basically read some kind of script that the North Korean dictator wrote for him. So there's no way, not even a 1% chance, that Kim Jong Un did not know anything about Otto Warmbier until way afterwards, because he knew and micromanaged the entire event. And in fact, let's take a look at Otto Warmbier's very heartbreaking confession in front of the international press.
Another American front and center in Pyongyang's propaganda parade.
I entirely beg you, people and government of the DPR Korea, for your forgiveness. Please, I have made the worst mistake of my life.
Otto Frederick Warmbier, a University of Virginia business major, making a dramatic, emotional confession.
Please, save this poor and innocent scapegoat.
So, just knowing what happens to Otto later, That's really heartbreaking and hard to watch. But next, let's take a look at the confession he had to make under duress, where he basically read a script written for him by his North Korean captors.
After I planned in detail to accomplish my plan, I arrived in Pyongyang on December 29th, 2015, through Beijing. On the early morning of January 1st, 2016, I committed my crime of taking out the important political slogan from the staff-only area of the Angakdo International Hotel, aimed at harming the work ethic and the motivation of the Korean people. After committing my crime against the people and government of the DPR Korea, I was detained on January 2nd, 2016, at the Pyongyang International Airport. I have been very impressed by the Korean government's humanitarian treatment of severe criminals like myself, and of their very fair and square legal procedures in the DPR Korea. I understand the severity of my crime, and I have no idea what sort of penalty I may face. But I am begging to the Korean people and government for my forgiveness, and I am praying to the heavens so that I may be returned home to my family.
For your forgiveness. Please, I have made the worst mistake of my life.
So as you can see, there's no way the North Korean government could parade around Otto Warmbier in front of the international media like that in such a high-profile way without the express consent and knowledge of Kim Jong Un. In fact, he likely orchestrated the entire thing using Otto Warmbier as this political chess piece in his fight against America. And it's just preposterous and outrageous that Donald Trump just takes Kim Jong Un at his word and doesn't understand the facts and the evidence and the history behind the entire ordeal. And next, let's take a look at what the doctors at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center said when Otto Warmbier first arrived to the United States from North Korea after he was in this persistent vegetative state.
His vital signs were stable upon arrival and have remained so. He requires no supplemental oxygen or respiratory assistance. He has no signs of infection or dysfunction of the major non-neurological organs. His neurological condition can be best described as a state of unresponsive wakefulness. He has spontaneous eye opening and blinking. However, he shows no signs of understanding language, responding to verbal commands, or awareness of his surroundings. He has not spoken. He has not engaged in any purposeful movements or behaviors. His exam shows a spastic quadriparesis, which means he has profound weakness and contraction of the muscles of his arms and legs. The most important diagnostic test thus far was a magnetic resonance imaging scan of the brain. This study showed extensive loss of brain tissue in all regions of the brain.
So based on the information his doctor provided at the press conference, especially the MRI showing global brain injury and death, what we can surmise is that Otto Warmbier likely suffered from a massive cardiopulmonary arrest, which resulted in his brain not getting enough blood and oxygen to survive. While his brain stem remained intact in that he's able to breathe on his own, he was not able to talk, he was not able to eat, he was not able to do anything other than be in a persistent vegetative state, entirely dependent on a feeding tube just to survive. Now, for a young person like Otto Warmbier, it's not likely for his heart to have spontaneously stopped and for him to get a heart attack. The most likely explanation is that he stopped breathing for some reason. That either means that he got strangled and suffocated to death, or he ingested some type of poison. And in fact, the North Korean position is that he was poisoned with botulism toxin, which can paralyze your breathing muscles, and took a sleeping pill, which then resulted in him having this massive brain death. It's impossible to exactly determine how he stopped breathing, and only the North Korean government knows. So I'm not going to speculate on the exact reason, other than the fact that it was so inhumane for this North Korean government to imprison Otto based on this accusation that he stole some kind of propaganda poster. Nobody deserves a death sentence for such a minor thing like that, if he had even done that, because his confession was entirely coerced. And Otto Warmbier is not the only victim in this brutal North Korean regime. They have even gone to other countries like Japan and kidnapped people, including Megumi Yokata, a 13-year-old girl who was just walking home from school. They kidnapped her in order to train her as a spy. And while they claim that she died in captivity, there's a lot of speculation that she may be alive, and her parents are every day, agonizing over the return of their daughter. And not only is it foreign nationals who are victims of the North Korean regime, but the North Korean people are the biggest victims of all. Millions of people live under this brutal dictatorship where their kids are taught to inform on their parents, where there's no due process for any kind of accusation, and you can just be sent to the prison gulags or executed for being accused of saying something bad against dear leader. This is a completely nightmare scenario in North Korea. And for our president of the United States to just take Kim Jong Un at his word is just so ridiculous and so hurtful for all of the victims of this regime. So anyway, hope you guys learned something from this episode of Dog Walk Trump on Otto Warmbier, and hope to see you guys next time at a future episode. All right, bye.